Hey everyone! Today we're really diving into something different, a legal case. It shows how even everyday workplace stuff can become a huge legal mess. We're looking at a situation, an employee who felt like he was demoted, a company saying, nope, he wasn't performing well, and it becomes this whole legal battle over constructive dismissal and abandonment.
Yeah, and you wouldn't believe how often this kind of thing happens. The law gets really, really specific about how we define dismissal abandonment. It's not just what went down, but what people intended to do.
Right, the why behind it all is super important. So, okay, let's talk about this guy, Ruperto Samson. He starts out as a key account manager, JS Unitrade Merchandise, this is back in 2005. And things are good, really good, like 104% sales growth, awards, even a trip to Beijing.
He sounds like he was killing it.
Yeah.
But things change. And in 2007, performance reviews, they start becoming a real problem.
Yeah, out of the blue, it seems like. Samson says he's suddenly getting criticized, even though he's got this great track record. It's like they even offered him a demotion or to pay him to leave, which, come on, sounds like they were trying to get rid of him. Eventually, he's stuck in an office job, no more field work, which probably made him feel even more like they were pushing him out.
This is where it gets, well, really important to pay attention to the details. The company saying, no, Samson's performance dropped. They say things like low inventory, promotions weren't done well, that sort of thing. But Samson, he's saying those are just excuses, that they were out to get him.
So classic, he said, she said, but with way higher stakes, right?
Absolutely.
So Samson, he stops going to work and files a complaint for illegal dismissal.
And that is where the legal battle really kicks off. The labor arbiter, they rule against Samson, say he wasn't constructively dismissed, should have gone through the company's process to complain. Now he does get 6 months of back pay and separation pay, but he's not getting his job back.
So kind of a win, but also not really what he wanted. What's interesting to me, though, is the labor arbiter, they agreed with the company that there were these performance problems, even though Samson said it was all unfair. What kind of proof makes them decide that?
That's a great question. We don't know everything from the case, but it's very likely the company had some real examples of Samson not performing well. Could be emails, sales numbers, maybe even customers complaining, and all that back up what they were saying. Because you can't just say there's problems. You got to prove it, especially in court. Right?
Yeah, totally. It's not enough just what happened. You got to show you can back it up. But it doesn't end there. This whole thing goes to the NLRC, and that's where it takes a turn. What'd they do?
Well, the NLRC, they decide that Samson, by not coming back to work after they asked him to, several times, they said he abandoned his job.
Hold on. So first it's maybe he was dismissed. Now it's he just left. How'd they even get to that?
It is wild, right? The NLRC, they looked at the fact that Samson never came back to work, even after the company reached out a bunch. They even mentioned he gave back company stuff, like he was done for good. So it wasn't just that he wasn't there, it was everything around it that made it seem like he meant to leave.
Okay, so it's not as straightforward as we first thought. Right, we're going from maybe he was dismissed to, no, he walked away. It's a lot for Samson to deal with, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where it gets really tricky, even for people who understand the law. See, there's this thing called constructive dismissal. It's not just getting fired. It's like if your workplace is so bad, you basically have to quit.
Oh, I see. So even though Samson's the one who stopped showing up, the argument is the company made it impossible to stay. That's kind of deep.
Exactly. And it can be really hard to prove because you got to show intent. Like, what were they trying to do? But hold on, before we go too far down that road, the story's got another turn. The Court of Appeals, remember them. They come in and change things up again.
Right. This is where it gets really good. They overturn what the NLRC said, so no constructive dismissal. But also, he didn't abandon his job either. It's like they met in the middle somehow.
They did, kind of. Basically, the court said there's not enough to say either side was totally right or wrong. They saw it as, like, miscommunication, different ideas about what was happening, and that messed up the whole working relationship.
So what happens when there's no bad guy, really? What'd the court even do about it?
Well, when it's like that, no clear winner. The court usually tries to make it fair for everyone. They gave Samson separation pay, kind of like saying, hey, this wasn't good, here's something to help you move on.
Makes sense. But what gets me is that miscommunication bit shows how important it is to talk to each other at work, clearly.
Huge. This whole case, it's like a textbook example of how not talking, making assumptions, it can blow up into a legal nightmare. If Samson, the company, they'd just sat down, figured out what they expected, dealt with problems early, who knows? Maybe none of this would have happened.
Makes you think, right? Like, what can we actually learn from all this so we don't end up in court ourselves?
Well, one thing that screams at me is documentation.
Huh?
Both sides, the company, the employee, got to keep track of everything. Performance reviews, emails, anything that could be important later, write it down. It's like creating a trail so everyone knows what happened.
Right, so if things go south, you've got proof.
Exactly. If it ain't written down, it's like it never happened, at least for the lawyers. But even more than that, this whole thing, it's like a lesson in communication, you know?
Look, don't avoid the tough conversations.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if Samson and his bosses, they'd just talk to each other more, cleared up what they expected, dealt with problems right away. Who knows? Maybe none of this goes to court.
It's a good reminder for everyone, I think. But we've also got to talk about, like, what does this mean for people? What if they're in a situation like Samson's right now?
Oh, for sure. Whether you're the boss or the employee, you got to know what your rights are. And honestly, if you're not sure what to do, talk to a lawyer sooner rather than later.
It's like having someone on your side who speaks legal. Well,
Exactly. They can explain all the complicated stuff, tell you what you can do, and fight for you if it comes to that.
this whole deep dive into Samson's case has been really eye-opening. It shows how even something that seems simple at work can become this whole legal mess, and why talking to each other, knowing what you're allowed to do, that's so important.
Totally. There's a lot of little details in the workplace, and sometimes having an expert there to help you, it can make all the difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that's another deep dive done and dusted. If this got you interested in all this legal stuff like constructive dismissal or anything else work-related, go do some research. There's a ton of info out there. It's pretty fascinating.